If people don't know who you are, the accolades would take a long time to go through.
Well, I started a long time ago, and I hadn't quit, and I never became a senior pastor. Children's people especially are Christians. We're really good at taking something that exists and trying to make it better. But that's not innovation.
Right.
That's creativity. And innovation is what doesn't exist that needs to exist. And then we got to the place where I think children's ministry got lazy.
I agree.
I want to see an outpouring of the Spirit of God on kids. It's not going to happen through doing the same old stuff. And so if we want something we hadn't had before, we've got to be willing to do something that we hadn't done before. People ask me all the time, what's the one thing in children's ministry you didn't see coming? And that would be...
Welcome to the podcast, Jim Wideman.
Whoa, podcast, baby. Here we are. Here we are.
Oh, I think you're already very well known, but for those who, I think you are. And if people don't know who you are, the accolades would take a long time to go through.
Well, I started a long time ago, and I hadn't quit, and I never became a senior pastor. And so there's a thin line between pioneer and old fart.
And you walk it so well.
I'll walk the line.
Many people don't know how we got here. Like the modern movement from like the Sunday school vibe to like there's children's church. And so can you give us a little history on?
Yeah. Well, from the 1700, from colonial America to really the 1950s, not a whole lot changed.
Yeah, it was very...
we're just talking Sunday school in the 17 and 1800s really was school on Sundays. Right. And a lot, when you look back on, like in America, when kids were working in factories and during all that time, kids weren't going to school. And so they said, well, let's just teach them about math and science and then also teach them about God all at one time. And so that's where some of that Sunday school happened. It wasn't really until the 40s we started seeing specialty things like clubs and Awana started in the 40s, and Vacation Bible School. Yeah. The first curriculum was done by Standard Press in the 40s. And, of course, they've all been bought out by David C. Cook. But it's kind of crazy how up in really the 40s, clubs kind of showed up. Christian camps started in the late 40s, 50s, and to 60s, Vacation Bible School and Sunday School, and that was children's ministry.
Yeah.
First couple of things that started happening in the 70s was extended session, where they realized there needs to be something other than the Sunday school hour to teach kids, because they really weren't getting it being on the church pew and sitting there with the funeral parlor fan just coloring or napping. And so extended session was kind of the first thing, which led to children's church. And no curriculums out there for children's church. One of the first, Bill Wilson, Sidewalk Sunday School guy, and Paul Tedesco did the Train Depot, which in the 70s was just the most cutting edge.
What was it? What was the Train Depot?
The Train Depot was the first children's ministry curriculum that had there were film strips, stories, but they were done as cartoons.
That's cool.
Craig Yo, who ended up working for Henson and did Yo-Yo Productions, he was the artist that they happened before. He worked for Jim Henson and Associates. And so, there were these banana people and just things that were just way before their time. You got object lessons with surprise endings. Can't say the magic word. And all these other things that were there. There were puppets. And so it was a total curriculum that gave you something other than flannel graph.
Yeah.
And just that whole Sunday school vibe where, that look on the disciples' face, that was scary. But it was one of those things that Train Depot was one of the first. And then from there, it was only children in the 70s, only churches of 1,500 or more had a children's pastor. And CPC, or the forerunner of INCM, was really the first group of children's pastors that got together to hang around. And the first year, I think, was 79. We were pregnant with Yancey. Had just found out she was going to be born, so I couldn't go. But it was 5 Assembly of God guys and 2 Nazarenes all met together in a hotel in Houston.
Wow.
Yeah.
There we go.
And the very first CPC was just 7 people in a hotel room talking about what if.
That had to be a God thing, because if you chose to go to Houston, that was, I say that as a Houstonian, so yeah.
But I think it was in January, so it was a little better. It wasn't in the middle of summer. But so we didn't go, but I heard all about it, and I was part of casting that vision. I went to the second one and went to a lot of the early ones. And CPC, it wasn't like a huge booth, trade show kind of environment. It was just children's pastors getting together to plan their whole year. And I know we would leave our wives at home some years, and there would be 5 or 6 children's pastors, Dick Gruber, Carl Lindeland, myself, Randy Christensen, different old children's pastor guys that we'd just plan our whole year. And we would plan things where full body costumes or a series or something we'd do, and we would let different churches with their budget buy different quarters. That's cool. So we would just mail it around and use the same stuff. So our churches would all work together, because you had to make everything. Right. If you did have a budget, and back then all the puppet companies had a newsletter, and for some reason they bought live scripts, and they would give you puppets if they printed your script, but then they had the publishing on the script. And so, my church was a big church, but I had $1,000 a year for my entire children's budget. And we had like 300, 400 kids, I guess. And it was a church of 1,600. But I had to do my kids' crusade. I had to do my Sunday school. We had to do children's church, everything out of that $1,000. And so I was writing puppet skits and just doing anything, getting these free puppets and all that. And so you just started making stuff. And 80s came along, and I played guitar, so I led worship and all this. But there was Nicodemus, the singing cowboy on the Gospel Bill show in '83, started. He was the first guy that made songs for kids on a cassette.
Yep.
And he left the track on the other side so you could lead it. And so when I saw that, I was working at a church in Birmingham that some of you kids need to Google Don Francisco, but he's alive. But we did his live album at our church. We had a 24-track recording studio, and I was an old jingle cat. And so I got to use the studio. So we started making cassettes for kids, and I'd choose different songs than what Ken was doing so that children's folks had a choice.
Yeah, there were options.
There were options, and so we were the first 2 people to kind of make music for cassettes. And then from there, I started making puppet tracks and doing puppet aerobics and just all the things I was creating, all the full body costumes. I made, recorded a theme song and stuff. And so then I got the idea, well, I could work for some of these puppet companies pre-recording their stuff. And I literally funded my children's ministry by just doing stuff for puppet productions, for One Way Street, for Sunshine Puppet Company, and all the different puppet companies. And by that time, I was trading out Train Depot puppets for puppet tracks, and I was using the American barter system. And, it was like beaver pelts and potatoes, learned from the Indians. And just doing our children's ministry. And it was kind of crazy because my first church was in Mississippi. And Mississippi still to this day leads the nation in almost every statistic that's bad. And one of the, this was 1978, one of the statistics was Mississippi led the nation in unwed pregnancies of children under 13. And so I had all these, back then you had sixth graders in children's church. I had everybody kindergarten through sixth grade. And these sixth grade girls would go to the skating rink on Friday night, and mama would, paint them and put the powder on and had them looking good. And these eighth grade, ninth grade knuckleheads, would mess with them. And so I said, there's got to be something other than children's church because they're not old enough for the youth group. Right. And you can't cover all this stuff in children's church. So we literally started in 78 pre-youth ministry, just trying to separate my fifth and sixth graders and be able to talk to them about when a note's passed, it says, I like you, do you like me, circle yes or no. That's when you need to know the scripture. Don't be yoked together with unbelievers. And just start talking about don't wait till the February youth pastors love, sex, and dating to be able to talk about some of these things. Yeah. And so I started doing, I didn't know I was starting something that would become a thing. Yeah. And, later on at Church on the Move, I found myself running 2,000 kids on a weekend. Right. And I was ministering at a church. We'd done a conference like we did on Saturday and Sunday. I stayed over on the cheap airfare because used to you had to stay over Saturday to get a good rate on the way the airfare was. And Pastor Willie had come back on the expensive Saturday morning, and the rest of us came on the cheap stuff the next day. And so I would minister in the morning. I was standing there watching this church check in kids, and they were doing it with a recipe box and 3x5 index cards. And I was just watching the whole thing, and the Holy Spirit spoke up and said, you need to do a better job of keeping up with kids. And I thought, oh, that's Holy Spirit. And I began telling the Lord why that little system, I'm a systems guy, so I started thinking why that index card system would not work. Yeah. And just getting a bad attitude, as sometimes we do, with the Lord. And all of a sudden, he said something that rocks me today. And he said, why should I give you any more kids if you can't keep up with the ones you already have? And so I asked the Lord to forgive my attitude. And I said, if you'll show me what to do, I'll do it. I get on the airplane that afternoon to go back to Tulsa. And, we flew all the time. And so, I was upgraded free, and I was sitting there in first class. And I always think whoever I'm sitting by is a divine appointment at 30,000 feet to help me. And so I asked this guy, I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I track boxes for Walmart. I said, what do you do? He said, everything. I run the warehouse, that anything that ends up in any Walmart store comes through my warehouse. And I said, if you track boxes, could you track people? He said, sure I could. And so I said, I don't know if you're a Christian. He told me he went to Ronnie Floyd's church, Springdale. And I said, oh, I've spoke there. And, but it's a big children's church. But anyway, so I sat there and talked to him, and he told me exactly what to do. He told me how to take $100 barcode reader program and hook it up to FileMaker Pro on the Mac and just take a regular database. And we made the first electronic check-in just because this is before Fellowship One or anybody. And it's just trying to meet a need. Because there was nothing to buy back, even through the 90s. I mean, they got to be a little more curriculum, but, it was very denominational and, it lacked some of the creativity. And there surely wasn't any, I can remember doing puppet songs with a record player. And I got really good at needle drops, to start a song that wasn't on track one. And, you just did, if it wasn't for Radio Shack, some of you kids need to Google Radio Shack, you found a cable that you could hook to a guitar amp and make it happen. Yep. And that was about all the stuff that we had in children's ministry. And so it was, last night we talked about innovation. And I think that children's people especially are Christians. I'll just paint the whole bunch of us. We're really confused between innovation and creativity. We're really good at taking something that exists and trying to make it better. But that's not innovation.
Right.
That's creativity. And innovation is what doesn't exist that needs to exist.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm so, I think that was the spirit of me and some of the other pioneers. We just said, like, if we need it, other people will too, and we'll just put it out there. And, we tried to innovate. And then we got to the place where I think children's ministry got lazy.
I agree.
And innovation just kind of went so far. And then, and then curriculum companies, because there's a thin line of making a profit. Well, you got to make a profit if you're going to stay in business. But, and there's those early adopters who buy everything you make, but you still have to sell a certain amount before you can create something new because all your expense is in the creating.
Yeah.
And so, there's most people that aren't an entrepreneur don't think about that. They just wonder, why can't I buy this? And so those are some of the tensions.
Yes.
But, I know for us, we started looking at, after you talked about A-Play last night, I mean, there is no reason that after A-Play that you would even need ProPresenter.
Well, I think, and you said it, especially for kids pastors, and I'm talking to the guy that, I made puppet tracks, I made full body, but I think kids ministry oftentimes isn't understood as like, hey, you just do it out of necessity. Yeah. Like it is, you really have to innovate because, like you said, I have $1,000 budget, and that sadly is probably still something that happens for some kids pastors. Yeah. They're like, I have $1,000 budget for the entire year. Or
the church pays my salary, and then I can remember Julie looking at us and saying, are the puppets getting new clothes, or are man the girls getting an Easter outfit? And sadly, well, sometimes they did, but sadly, we did fund a lot of the stuff, and God always provides.
He does.
He's so good. But the big thing for me, I know, was watching this whole children's movement only at really large churches. And today, large is relative terms, like busy.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're busy, but it's a relative term. Some seasons are definitely more busy than others.
For sure.
you're in the middle of the last 113 days. You've been busy.
It's been full.
You've been busy.
It's been
and
full.
I've been praying for you. But you could program with A Play an entire day from the moment a child walks in all the way till they leave.
The way it's set up, and you would appreciate this, the thinking behind it wasn't just that you could change the behaviors, but I kept saying, think about someone who, like, there should never be someone alone in a room with a kid. Like, but if we don't have enough people, could I stand on stage and with one click of a button, fire the next cue? And I didn't have to download everything, put it on a computer, hook the computer up, make sure the computer's working, and it's like everything comes from one source. And when I hit this button, it plays the next video. It cues the next thing. And that was just because I know, being a kids pastor, having to stand on stage and be the one-man show and be the one, like.
And all I know is every week when I go to Costco, TVs are bigger and cheaper.
Every week.
And, it seems like I remember when I paid $2,000 for something I couldn't pick up, and it wasn't very big. And now I look, it's $700 for one as big as my house. And, my wife always says, you'd get a sunburn watching that, it's what I look at. We have so many more opportunities. And the other thing that, people ask me all the time, what's the one thing in children's ministry you didn't see coming? Yeah. And that would be a full-time children's pastor at a church of 300 or less.
Wow.
Because that didn't exist, and we see that all the time.
Wow.
So that's one of those things that, as we look forward, you're going to have to work with innovation and going to have to create. That's the thing that, after looking at what Amazing Life is doing, you're just adding more and more tools as well as stuff that the tools can work with. And, if you'd told me about this 50 years ago, I couldn't imagine. You have to remember, when I went to college, there was no internet, no copiers. There was no central air heat. My multi-staff ministries class said I could work with up to 6 people someday. It was just all small church stuff. And my options were, I remember my youth ministry class in college included handbells. And they were saying that was a great way to reach teenagers, is handbells, little white gloves. No.
So cool.
No. And so, it's just everything changes. And whether or not you're willing to change with it. And I think that's been the thing for me is I would rather hang out with younger leaders and learn. And, one of the questions I ask every younger leader, what are 2 or 3 apps I need to know about that I don't know about? Or what are you using? And I know for me, I went from just glad I had a job to building a staff and having an assistant. And I worked through an assistant for years. And now my assistant is 3 apps.
Yep.
And so that I use, and I really like the apps better than some of the assistants. So it's it's one of those things that if you don't keep changing, you'll get changed.
Yeah, but your mission hasn't changed.
No.
The methods have, time and time again.
Bottom line is, I know talking to my grandkids and what they're into and what they do, and the whole, since 2020, we now live in a culture where we can work one place and live another place. When I was younger, if you'd asked me, will that ever happen? No, that won't ever happen. And like my grandsons play with folks that aren't in the room with them.
Right.
Like the other day, I said, "What are you doing on your iPad?" to the 8-year-old this early in the morning. He said, "I'm looking for other homeschoolers. They're playing this game that go to church with me." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so, it's one of those things that there's still some problems in children's ministry that nobody has solved. Like, what do you do with a child during an adult small group?
Correct.
I've always wondered, why can't there be a video game type app where it takes the curriculum and you have to answer questions
To keep unlocking different levels.
to unlocking different levels on that age group, and just put everybody on a device with a headset, and you have that the small group teenager facilitator in there, but it would reinforce what Sunday's lesson
That's cool.
would be. But that's still something that nobody's doing yet. And so,
Give us another 113 days, Jim. We're working.
telling me that's, that was the roving reporters were coming through asking, what are you looking forward to next year's conference? And that's what I said. If you guys have come up with all this in 113 days, imagine what's going to happen in 365. It's going to be so much better.
There's a lot on the plans.
Oh, telling me. And so, when I was at Church on the Move, we always said the three most dreaded words out of Pastor Willie's mouth was, "I've been thinking," because we knew we were fixing to get after it.
About to get busy.
And I think that can be said about you and Chris. And I've always wanted to, saddle my horse with folks that wanted to do something. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be, that you guys would have me come alongside and help. And, because, Chris, my children's pastor that's here at the conference with me, we were talking, and, there's a lot of people that always ask, if I'm going to retire and all this stuff. And I just don't see it as a biblical concept. I just think when the Lord's done with you, he takes you home. And, I'm not ready to hang it up. And so I look at, there's so much to be done. And in the last days, God says, I'll pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And the first group that's listed are the group that I get to work with, sons and daughters. And you say, well, how do you know you're in the last days? Well, I've done the math. They're my last days. The last days I'm going to get. And so I want to see an outpouring of the Spirit of God on kids. And I want to see folks prophesying, moving the gifts. And I want to see that happen in my lifetime. And, I'm going down swinging, trying to establish those last days outpouring and the things. And it's not going to happen through doing the same old stuff. Same action always brings same results. And so if we want something we hadn't had before, we've got to be willing to do something that we hadn't done before. And that's where innovation comes in.
I just, last night, I needed to clarify. I said, when we're looking around and we're looking for people who, especially in today's age, are going to finish well, I thought about it later. I'm like, that may have implied that you plan to finish sometime soon. And if anyone knows you, though, it's what you just said. It's until your last dying breath. I don't know if you'll ever not be doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And, we go to the grocery store and we're spoiled because we have frozen this and frozen that, and we have canned this, canned that. But everything that's canned or frozen is fruit from another season.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's not fruit from this season. And my Bible tells me that in my old age, I'll be green and I'll produce fruit. And I'm just not going to have to live off the canned stuff. And I'm so thankful for the fruit from other seasons it was a blessing to others. But, what am I doing to bear fruit today? And, the reason I coach, the reason I mentor younger leaders, and now as an XP, I spend really 90% of my time just putting into younger staff. Because if they can learn the stuff that took me 35, 40 years to learn in just a year or two, then they'll be able to accomplish more in their ministry than I ever thought of. And that's what, we all do better when somebody tells us where to step and what to do.
Absolutely.
And, if you've ever been fishing with a guide, it's a lot better than doing it by yourself, and that's the same way with coaching and things. And so I'm excited.
Well, I mean, we've got a lot more to come, and this won't be the last time that we have you on.
Yeah.
I know for a fact it won't be the last time.
It'll probably be the last time we're on 6th floor.
Probably. But yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Jim.
Hey, thanks for letting me.
Oh man, this was fun. Well, we'll see you soon.
Okay.